Ready to start chapter 23 of Frostheart, which is called A Teacher and His Student. To Ash's surprise, the tent was empty. Even though it was his break, Toby must have been off somewhere helping the rest of the crew. So Ash sat in the tent and tried to enjoy having a few moments to himself, warm, cosy and relatively safe. He dug into his pack and found what he was looking for. He passed the two pieces of his ocarina between his fingers, sorrow pulling at his insides. It was useless in this state, unable to be played, but he still couldn't bring himself to get rid of it. He matched the broken windway to the main body, trying to figure out a way to fix it. As he did, he tried to focus on happier thoughts, like how he'd figured out what, or rather who, the drifting star was. He still didn't understand the relevance of the Frostheart, though, or why it needed protecting, but it felt like he was making some progress. But if he was honest with himself, his mind was elsewhere, and he was not as excited as he thought he would be. Toby's words warning Ash of the dangers of the wilds and how unprepared he was for them echoed in his mind, and now he saw the truth in them. He had thought his song weaving would help keep them safe out on the snow sea, but the lurker proved powerful and merciless, and he realised that he still had much to learn if he wanted to stay alive. So when Toby finally came back to their tent, carrying a large pile of wooden arrow shafts and a sack of feathers, Ash was all questions. "What do you hear when you listen to the world weave?" Ash asked Toby, sitting cross-legged and alert, ready to learn. Toby, who had begun to fletch the arrow shafts with sinew, looked surprised by the question. He lowered himself to face Ash and met his eyes. "I hear the world's sorrow," Toby answered. "I hear it crying out for help, for balance, for the hateful corruption that has so long infected it to be healed." Ash blanched at these heavy words. The Yeti closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "But I also hear the wind. It sings a song of pure joy at its freedom. I hear the ice chime, its excitement at being thrilled to exist before it melts back into water. I hear the water roaring and rushing, pulsing with energetic life. I hear the earth below it hum with a deep, mighty rumble, reminding me that wherever I am, whatever I am doing, I am never truly lost, for the world, all of it, is where I belong." Ash blinked. He'd never heard Toby be so open, let alone share anything so beautiful. The Yeti took another deep breath and opened his eyes. He reached for a feather and cut it in half with his knife. "It sounds similar to when I listened to the Leviathan song," Ash said carefully, realising it was true. "And when I sing back to them, our song seems to connect us. I know it's wrong, but it's true. I feel safe, almost at home." Ash paused for a moment. "So long as they're not roaring and trying to kill us, that is," he added sheepishly. Toby looked thoughtful at this, as though an idea had suddenly struck him, his eyes lingering on the broken ocarina in Ash's hands. "With training and perseverance you will master your power," he said. "I wish we could actually train my song weaving instead of, well, just sitting around listening. Just because you are not singing does not mean you're not learning. Before you can song weave successfully, you have to show restraint and control. You cannot rush headfirst into such power. Those that do are the ones who darken the song weaver name. I do want to show restraint and control. I eagerly await seeing it." Ash swore to himself that he would. The quiet drew on, Toby winding the sinew, the only sound to be heard. Ash became conscious that he was just sitting there, staring at his ocarina. It felt strange, after all these weeks of hard work, to be doing nothing. He reached for the pile of arrow shafts and began to help Toby to fletch them. "Shard seems to know so much about song weaving. Do you think that maybe you should give him another chance?" "I need all the help I can get," Ash ventured, feeling brave. He wanted to take advantage of finding Toby in such a reflective, gentle mood. "I know you don't like him, but he says he wants to help me find more song weavers, maybe even find my parents, and maybe you'd like him if you tried." "A hurtler can look like it's smiling before it has your head in its jaws," Toby replied, eyes distant and mouth snarling with distaste. "Trust me, boy, I've met people like him before. You do best to stay away from the likes of him." Ash sighed. "Keep chipping away, he'll understand one of these days," Ash assured himself. An awkward silence dragged on. Ash pulled too hard on the sinew, crushing the fletch he had been trying to tie to the shaft. He cursed his carelessness. Toby paused momentarily, looking as though he was about to say something, before apparently deciding against it. On the silence stretched. "What are the Yeti lands like?" Ash asked after a while, surprising even himself with his boldness. "Cold and harsh," Toby said without glancing up. Ash nodded. Yeah, given that the land had produced Tobu, this was pretty much what he'd imagined. But they are beautiful, Toby added. The world's spine mountain looks blue or purple, depending on the light. They are cold, but not so featureless as the Fira lands. Deep forests and tall grasses defy the snow. Herds of bevorers roam the lands, stalked by mountain cats, while the skies above almost ripple with the beating of bird wings, and stone statues stand guard over the mountain passes, carved by Yeti craftsmen. The mountains truly are a place of life. Ash wished he could see it, but he knew that he never would. The Yeti did not allow humankind to enter their lands. Do you miss it? You must miss them. The rest of the Yeti, I mean, Ash asked. I don't really miss the Fira, but I do miss my parents, or at least the idea of them. I would love to have a family. Ash was about to reach for the pieces of his ocarina, but he stopped himself, knowing full well the pieces would not stick. Toby watched him, his brows for once not fixed in a frown. Clinging to a painful past will only poison the present, he said softly, but the future is still there to be made. Ash smiled. These were the most comforting words he had ever heard from Tobu. Another silence drew in. I didn't know you had been a teacher before, Ash said after a while. Tobu gave him a puzzled look. You mentioned before when you were teaching me about the world weave on deck, about a boy who wouldn't listen to you, and something bad happened to him. Tobu only lifted his chin in acknowledgement. Ash studied his face with a side glance, too afraid to look him right in the eye. He was surprised to see sadness there, memories of past pain. He was my son, Tobu said at last. Ash's breath caught in his throat. Tobu, a father? He couldn't even begin to imagine it. What happened? The Yeti was silent for a while. Some things are best left in the past, he said, throwing an arrow down and leaving the tent. It's the end of chapter 23.